What's up, students? My name is David, and when I was in kindergarten, I became best friends with a kid named Jonathan. He was a great friend, and we would always hang out together at school, and I thought for sure that we were going to be best friends for life. Unfortunately for me, at the end of the school year, Jonathan's dad got a new job, and his family had to move to Texas. He and I were both disappointed we wouldn't be able to go to school together, but we still thought we'd be able to stay in contact. After all, we were best friends. Now, I know what I'm about to say next is going to make me sound ancient, but back then there was no texting, there was no social media, so the plan was that Jonathan and I would send letters to each other to keep in touch. I know, this sounds crazy, it seems crazy even to me now, and I'm sure some of you are probably convinced now I'm a boomer, so yeah, thanks a lot for that. I certainly feel old now. Great. Anyways, over the course of the next year, I sent a few letters down to Texas for Jonathan, and I waited patiently to hear back from him, but I never did. And after a while, I forgot about sending him anything, and I made new best friends, and I moved on. And now I don't even remember what he looks like today, and I can't even remember what his last name was. It's kind of funny. What happened? We moved apart and out of sight, and over time we forgot about our friendship. This happens all the time with friendships and happens in plenty of other areas of our life as well. The quickest way for something or someone to go from super important to kind of forgot about it is for it to be out of our sight. Out of sight, out of mind is a real thing. This can also be the case when it comes to our relationships with God. We can't physically see him, so he seems far away. It seems weird to try to connect with or talk with someone who we can't see, we can't text, we can't call, we can't Snapchat. This makes it hard for us to prioritize connecting with God. He's out of sight, so he's out of our minds. Sometimes it can also be hard to connect with God because he doesn't seem to answer. We may try to pray and talk to him about what's going on in our lives, but since we can't audibly hear him, oftentimes it feels like we're sending a message and he's not replying. Kind of like my friend Jonathan. Thankfully, as I've learned over the years, even though we can't physically see God and we can't audibly hear him, God does actually listen when we talk to him. And he cares about what's going on in our lives. He wants to connect with us and for us to know him more and more. So throughout this video series, it's our hope that you'd come to believe that God actually does want to connect with you and that you matter so much to him. And we also want to help you connect with him better. That's why in this series, we're going to be talking about the habits that we can have for our faith that help us to connect with God better. Habits like prayer, reading the Bible, and telling others about Jesus are all great ways for us to connect with God. How important is it for us to connect with God? Well, let's see what Jesus has to say about that. One day, in response to religious leaders asking him which of God's commandments was the greatest, he said this: "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind, and with all your strength." So Jesus tells us what he wants us to do. He wants us to love an invisible God with everything we have. But he doesn't say how at that moment. Later, Jesus uses an illustration to help us explain that. John, one of Jesus' followers and his friends, records a big conversation between Jesus and his disciples. Jesus knew that while he was visible to his friends at that moment, he wouldn't be with them much longer. Eventually, he would return to heaven and no longer walk the earth. It didn't mean that Jesus would no longer exist. He would just no longer be physically present and visible in the way that they had gotten used to. With that in mind, Jesus gives them this illustration. "I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing." Now back then, agriculture or farming was as common and popular as cell phones are today. It was a part of everyday life. Everybody knew about farming, vines, and plant life. They would have immediately known that the branch of a plant can only create fruit if it is connected to the nutrients that the vine provides. So let's put it in terms that we would use today. It would be like saying that this power cord for this lamp, it's really useless. This lamp is useless if it's not plugged in to this outlet into the wall. It would also be like saying that your phone charger needs to be plugged in as well, right? You need to remain in God, just like this phone needs to be remained plugged in to this outlet, and this lamp needs to be plugged into this outlet in order to gain power. If you unplug this phone and use it for long enough, it's going to die. It's just like if you are spiritually not connected enough with God, after a while, you're going to find that your life is a little bit out of whack. So the verse written today might have gone a little bit differently. It might have said that, I am the power outlet and you are the cord. If you remain in me and I in you, you will power many devices. Apart from me, you can power nothing. Think about the incredible things that you can do and all the people you can connect with through your phone or through your Xbox or some other things that are connected to an outlet. It can do wonders. If your Xbox is unplugged, it's just a pile of metal. If your phone is connected to an outlet and has battery, It's the single most innovative piece of technology of all time, except maybe robots or AI or whatever. But if your phone has no battery power left, it has all the potential in the world, but that's all it has, is potential. If your device has no electricity, it's dead. This is a lot like you and your relationship with God. You have so much power. You have so much potential to do so many things. To love your friends, to serve your family, to make wise decisions, to pursue God's plan for your life, and to change your world right where you are. And you can do this simply by living the life God has called you to live and being connected to Him. You can do all these things and more in your life if you're plugged in, if you're connected to God. That's when you begin to bear fruit. When you're connected to God, you get to live as the single greatest creation of all time. God said so when He made you. If you aren't connected to Him, you have all the potential in the world, but there's something standing in the way. Now, you're still the greatest creation of all time, but there's a gap between where you are and where you could be. We need to stay connected to God to know God. And we need to know God in order to love God more. And loving God, that's what Jesus said was the most important commandment of all time. In order to love God with everything we are, we need to be connected to Him with all that we are. Because connecting with God helps us to know Him better. Connecting with God will help you know Him better. But connecting with an invisible God will take some effort. It will take making connection a habit. Loving God with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength means that we're putting in the effort over time to make it happen. So how do we do that? Well, there's lots of ways to connect with God, but the basic, most simple idea is to spend time with God. This can look like a lot of different things. We can pray and we can talk to Him about our lives. We can read some of the Bible. We can listen to worship music. We can talk with our friends and our family about God and so much more. This week, I want to give you a challenge. Just spend 10 minutes each day with God. Pick one way that you prefer to connect with Him and go do that. Maybe it's prayer, maybe it's reading the Bible, maybe it's taking a walk in nature. I truly believe that connecting with God on a daily basis for just 10 minutes will make your life better and make you better at life. Now, getting to know and connecting with a God we can't see will take time. It'll take creating a habit over time before it starts to feel easier and more natural. But I love this quote from James, the half-brother of Jesus. He says, "Come near to God, and He will come near to you." There is no magic formula about this. It's just taking the time to make it a habit. Over time, we will find ourselves closer to God, and He will feel closer to us. Even though God is with us all the time, the habit of spending intentional time with Him will eventually bring a feeling of closeness we maybe haven't experienced before. Here's the thing. God wants you to make a habit of spending time with Him, of getting close to Him, not because He wants to control you, but because He wants to be close to you. He wants a relationship with you, and He wants to connect with you. One great place to connect with God and develop your relationship with Him is your group. Your group is a great place to talk about making a habit of spending time with God. You can talk about your struggles, you can talk about your frustrations when it comes to your relationship with God, and you can share ideas that have worked for you. You can also hear from your group leader who has spent years learning to connect with God in their own way that works for them. Now remember this, you matter so much to God, and He wants to have a relationship with you. And ultimately, connecting with God will help you to know Him better.